The Cadillac Escalade gets a refresh for the 2025 model year. And in this video, I'll cover the exterior changes, the interior changes, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition these days. And so as far as the 2025 Escalade, well, this is quite a looker, I think. They've brought it up to speed with all the other modern Cadillacs, especially the electric ones, with a revised front end there. So you have the more slender LED strip there for the daytime running lights, and the actual headlights, now they're in that waterfall strip of LEDs you have going down that new front bumper. And believe it or not, they were able to make the grille even larger than before. So we have a very large grille, and this one has all the black accents because this is the Sport Platinum. The Sport is what gives you the dark trim and you know, the dark window surrounds and all that. And also this deep sea metallic color, one of the best Escalade colors ever, and arguably one of my favorite colors on a modern car. I mean, it's so beautiful. Has a little bit of a greenish hue in the light, but this beautiful sea blue, it's just a really, really nice color as well. Highly recommend that. So yeah, that's all the changes on the front here. The side is basically the same. There's really no changes there, but going out to the back, you also have some slightly revised taillights, as well as a very lightly revised rear bumper there. You know, nice little changes, but you have to be an Escalade expert to even pick that out, I think. One thing that does stand out a little bit more here, though, are the new 24-inch wheels that are available. These ones we have here are an optional 24-inch that are about $1,800 extra, which isn't bad, honestly, for a wheel this large, and has a nice like nickel finish to it here. But there's, of course, still some smaller wheels if you want to focus on the ride quality even more. But I have to say that even on these 24s, the ride is still really good. So don't be discouraged if you do like the large wheels. And I'll talk more about how it rides when we're out on the road. But otherwise, there's a couple other new colors here. Overall, just a really nice refresh. Keeps it looking, you know, fresh and modern, but doesn't change what makes the Escalade great. The interior is the biggest change of the Escalade here. I mean, they completely threw out the entire front interior of the old Escalade, and we have everything new, and man, is this an impressive interior. I mean, obviously the most impressive screen array in any vehicle in production currently, I think. It went from an already very impressive 38-inch curved display, OLED display, to now a 55-inch curved thing that goes almost from pillar to pillar. I mean, you have these little speakers bookending it, but other than that, I mean, it is really impressive. And again, the curvature of it is also really, really cool. And there's some pros and some cons to this screen. So I'll get into all that here in a minute. But first, the basics here. The seats are really still soft and comfortable, and I think these are mostly the same. So, you know, these ones here in this top Sport Platinum, of course, are all power operated. You have the semi-aniline leather here, though, in the top versions of the Escalade. And these seats have a bunch of different adjustments. You can adjust the bolstering, lumbar, thigh support, all of that. But then you also have heating, ventilation, and massage. And it's a really great, nice and vigorous and intense massage, a bunch of different, you know, programs for it there. And it's just so well done. And I've put over 600 miles on this vehicle in a long highway drive here that I've been doing. And these seats are top notch for comfort, as you would expect out of something like this, but really fantastic. And I love the look of them too. The steering wheel is all new here. Now, if you're familiar with the newest Cadillac products, this will look familiar because it's the same wheel you get in Lyric and some of the others basically. And so it has a great 9-3 grip, has, you know, the Super Cruise here on the top of it. And I love how it's just, you know, open air here on the bottom. So you can just hang your hand off the bottom if you'd like. And you have a few capacitive touch buttons here on it, as well as some nice little metal switches. But at least with those buttons, they have little notches on them as well, so that you know that you're in the area of a button, which I think is a really smart inclusion and certainly helps so you can land on the right things without having to always look down at it like you do with many other capacitive touch steering wheels. So I think Cadillac's done this very well, and it's a very attractive wheel with all the metal and all that as well. Now, moving on to this screen array. We'll start with the gauge cluster part first. So that is very cool. Now, there's not a lot of customization there, but, you know, for a vehicle like this, you don't really need much anyway. I do actually kind of appreciate the bars here. It kind of is harkening back to maybe some Cadillacs from the 60s and the 70s, just having a bar for the tach and the speedometer there. But, you know, with this much screen real estate, I mean, you could do so much more with it than they are. Now, you know, I mean, maybe they just didn't want to get overcomplicated, but, you know, it would be nice to see a little more customization. Aside from that right panel is basically the only part you can really customize, and that's also partially just the control stuff, including the new augmented reality display you have here in the gauges that can display directions for you and things like that. This one also has night vision here in this top version, which is very cool to have here too. So, you know, lots of functionality with all that stuff. There's also a map view there, so there's a little bit there, but, you know, I'd love to see, you know, a bunch of different gauges, a bunch of different looks, themes, you know, all that kind of stuff. We don't have too much of that here, but, you know, nice that we have some. Now, coming over to the middle here, this is obviously the infotainment portion of it, and like all other GM vehicles, it's running a new Android automotive-based operating system that's really well executed here. So it does have Google built in, so you have Google Assistant, you have Amazon Alexa, you have Google Maps, the Google Play Store. So if you want to natively run apps and sign into all your apps and sign into your, you know, Google Maps account and stuff, you can have everything be perfectly synced with the car here, assuming you know, have the data package on here to, you know, give you the internet connection. But it's really cool. It also now has Hulu. It has a bunch of different streaming services there, YouTube, and a bunch of other, you know, things you can do there. And so really great you have that, but crucially here in the gas-powered Cadillacs, you still thankfully do have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. And that's really nice. Now, the only thing about this screen in general is that it's a bit of a reach. You know, that was kind of one of the concessions I think they had to make for the curvature of this screen, is that the part that's furthest away is actually the part you're touching, not the part that's, you know, your gauges or your passenger display there. So it's a bit of a reach. And for example, on Waze, if I'm trying to put in an alert, you know, that I saw something on the road or whatever, that is a really far reach and just ergonomically not great. Now, you do have this controller wheel, which is nice to certainly have, and I appreciate it even more so now because of how far away that screen is. But, you know, these other capacitive touch buttons here on it, you're going to have to look down to make sure you're hitting the right one, because there isn't any notch there for those, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But the controller is very nice with its look and its feel. You know, at least you have that option if you don't want to be constantly reaching up. I ended up just reaching up still for the most part, but, you know, I think actually Lincoln has actually done this a little bit better with the Navigator, which also has a smaller but similar idea of a full width, almost full width kind of display, but they have the Apple CarPlay controls on the other smaller auxiliary screen that's closer to the driver. I'd love to see Cadillac do that, because coming down, you do see we do have an auxiliary screen here. It's a little bit smaller than the one that you have in the Lincoln, but it's still a really nice display here. And, you know, you can see it does all your other controls as far as your seat controls, your climate controls, also your headlights, because we also have lost the headlight switch, so that's now on the screen here. But again, auto headlights means you're probably not going to mess with that a whole lot. But so there are some changes here. You also have a, you know, button shortcut there for the camera, the 360 camera this has and all that. And I actually really like this screen, but I would love to see just one more button to put the CarPlay functions in here, because then I could just do that nice and easy and then have it, you know, repeated up here on this upper display. And that just could be a nice little, you know, thing maybe for a software update in the future, because this whole system is over-the-air updatable. So, you know, maybe something we'll see in the future. We'll have to see. But, and then moving on to the passenger display, another very large portion. Surprisingly though, unlike some other passenger displays that kind of duplicate a lot of the middle stuff, this one, it's just for entertainment. It's basic. I mean, it shows you a couple basic car things, but it's really just streaming whatever you want to stream, and that's it. Including, there's an HDMI port down on the passenger's knee area there. So you can actually plug in something and have a legit streaming thing going there with an HDMI cable too, if you'd like, or you have, again, the internet-based stuff there. But it would be nice, you know, to see, you know, radio controls over there, see, you know, map controls, things like that, so that you could have the passenger do that without them having to reach over to the middle here. First world problems, but, you know, in other vehicles with passenger displays, my wife and I have actually noticed it is kind of nice to have her be able to do the radio and stuff right in front of her instead of her having to, you know, reach over here. Again, very much first world problems, but, you know, again, just something that maybe we can see added in the future, because otherwise that passenger screen is also kind of underutilized. But, you know, it's a great first start here, and again, hopefully we get some updates to enhance the usability eventually. But now, as far as all the storage spaces here in this vehicle, so you have nice large pockets in the doors. And speaking of the doors, I have to just comment on the materials here quickly, because I mean, you have this real nice fabric here that does feel pretty luxurious. It's a little bit of a coarser fabric, but in a luxurious and high-end kind of way. The wood is beautiful, the leather, the stitching, the metal makes this vehicle feel every penny worth its $125,000 price tag for this one as tested. it feels very impressive in here. You'll also see the metal speaker grills because this has the AKG 36 speaker surround sound stereo. And I adore this stereo. I've already gone on about it a bunch in my first Escalade review for the pre-refresh version. But for anyone who missed that, I mean, this system is really good. Now, the speaker placement is slightly different here, again, because you have them incorporated into the corners of the screen here. But it's still just, honestly, I think probably the best sounding stereo in a car I've ever experienced. I said that a few years ago, and I think that still holds. I mean, even, some of the other stuff that I've tested that's pretty high end, maybe, Rolls-Royce kind of stereo or something, if I had enough time with those, could maybe outdo this. But as far as anything remotely mainstream, this is absolutely the best stereo of the bunch. The 3D effect for the surround sound, Cadillac or AKG really got it perfect with this because it's not so overboard that it feels artificial or weird. Some other 3D systems can feel a little disorienting almost, and you can clearly tell it's a software kind of thing. This feels very natural and truly feels like you're on stage and you're hearing this instrument over here and this thing over there. It's fantastic. Again, 600 miles. Usually, I'm listening to podcasts and stuff on road trips. I just been listening to my music almost entirely because it's just I just want to hear every single song that I own with this stereo. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Absolutely go for the top AKG stereo. Now, lower trims do also get an AKG stereo. I think it's 18 speakers. I'm sure that one's fine too, but man, this stereo, if you have the means, absolutely do not hesitate. Go for this stereo. You will not regret it. It is just so phenomenal. And I think still the standard in at least luxury SUVs, that's for sure, in my opinion. So anyway, though, moving over to the other storage spaces here, we have a nice little area here, both to the left and to the right of this other auxiliary screen with USB-C jacks there, a wireless charging pad, and then you have your two cup holders here with some nice trim around them, and another little bonus space here right in front of your armrest. And then you have the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded with some leather here, and you open that up, and this one it's only $700 for a refrigerator / freezer, they call it, and that is going to be so nice. I mean, it does cut in a little bit on your extra storage space, but come on, $700 and you get a refrigerator in your Cadillac. No-brainer, easy option to choose there, and also just very handy. And you also see a USB-A and USB-C jack in there, but I love that option and really great that we have that here. Now, moving on to the second row here in the Escalade. That is very well done too, and that's going to be mostly the same as what we've had before. This one does not have the executive seating package with the console and all that, so this is actually not a fully loaded Escalade, believe it or not, at $125,000, but still is a very nice place to be. They do just have only heated seats. I feel like I know the executive seat package, I think, is how you get the cooled seats, but 125 grand, you should still have cooled seats in this thing. That's the only thing I have to say. But we just have heating here. They have their own climate controls there, power outlets, HDMI ports and all that for their screens. They have new 12.6-inch touchscreens there for both passengers in the back, and it's basically the same as the passenger display here, where you can see basic car info, but otherwise it's just going to be designed to stream YouTube and all the other streaming services there. And and you can also control these screens, by the way, up front here. If you have young ones that can't actually touch those screens on their own, you're able to do that up front here, which is also very nice to be able to do. And they even come with their own noise canceling headphones. They're very impressive. And they also have a great view to look out of this panoramic moonroof. Is really impressive too. Then moving on to the third row there, that's again no different compared to the pre-refresh Escalade, but for anyone who's unfamiliar, I'm 5'9", I'm sitting behind myself. I have still about an inch of legroom to spare, so you can fit, adults in that third row, even with that second row slid all the way back. And of course, if you want to slide that second row up a little bit, then you get even more rear legroom back there, which is great. But you also see USB-C jacks back there, cup holders, their own air vents, of course. Now, moving on to the cargo space here, again, that's average, like you see in any other Escalade and many other, large full-size vehicles like this. If you want to have the most cargo space, of course, you're going to want to go for the ESV version, which is the long wheelbase one, and that basically just gives you a bunch more cargo space. That's going to be the way to go if you actually want to transport the gear for everyone that can fit in this giant school bus of a vehicle. There's a little bit of storage under the floor there, not much, and nice giant speaker there as well on the side there. But anyway, let's start it up and go for a drive. So the Escalade here has still the usual Cadillac key. Nothing new or different there, just still a nice key, but it would be nice to see something that's not plastic, just to go with, again, the very high-end nature that Cadillac's going for these days. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button here, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2025 Escalade. So the first thing you notice about it, well, I think the first thing I noticed is that you still have really great visibility here. You have a nice high seating position, great view forward, view out of the sides is still really good, and you of course have a very commanding view of the road here. And having, again, the 360 camera is very nice. Having all the assistance stuff really does help a lot, especially in tight spaces. And if you're not a pro at driving a large vehicle like this, it's just very nice to have all that assistance. And by the way, all the safety tech and all the driver assistance stuff is all standard. Everything is standard, so there's not a single option box to tick, which is refreshing because, some of the German competitors, which are a little bit smaller, but they still are charging you extra for some of the advanced features, and this has everything, which I love. But anyway, otherwise though, of course, it's nice and quiet in here, especially when you're not on the gas here. But even with some gentle throttle application here, it's so smooth, so serene. Now at highway speeds, you still do get a little bit of wind noise, but it's so minor, and the second you even turn on this stereo and have it up just even a little bit, all of that goes away immediately. Trust me, you're going to want to have the stereo on or have a good conversation going, I suppose. But, you're not going to notice any kind of wind noise whatsoever in this vehicle. Other things, though, all the same great driving characteristics of the Escalade remain because nothing has changed mechanically here. It was, again, just an exterior and interior redo here. So if you're familiar with this generation of Escalade, there's nothing new. There's no surprises here. But for anyone, again, unfamiliar, you have the combination of an air suspension with magnetic ride control for the adaptive dampers, and you get the independent rear suspension now here for this generation of the Escalade, which is a new feature that gave us more third row space and, again, a better ride and better handling. And so it's great that we have that, and the fact that that's continuing, of course, is really good. And so it just means you have a nice smooth ride. Now this is still a body on frame vehicle, but it's really pretty top notch. And again, outside of a Rolls Royce or something, it's going to be hard to beat this ride quality, I think. Other things I really love about the Escalade are that, you have a nice responsive throttle. This V8 gives you instant response. No turbos to spool up or anything here with this, just naturally aspirated V8, nice and punchy. Brakes also have a nice responsive touch to them too here. So just start leaning on them and they give you some nice bite there and are just very much how you want something like this to feel. But I put it up into the sport mode here, and we're going to merge onto the highway here and see how the Escalade accelerates. And here we go. Roar from that 6.2 liter V8 engine. And it gets up and goes very nicely here. And that's, what you love about the Escalade is the fact that it's the only one with a V8 engine still. The other competitors have gone to the twin turbo 6 cylinders, and not so with this. You have good old V8 still. Now it is down on power compared to some of those competitors, especially on torque. We have 420 horsepower, 460 pound-feet of torque here in this. 0 to 60 is about 6 seconds or so, not like anyone's drag racing these. If you want more power, there's the Escalade V with 682 horsepower. Those things are a riot, absolutely. If you like performance, go for that. It is a dream SUV and a dream vehicle in general. So anyway, but good amount of power here, and we are out on the highway, so I'm going to go ahead and put on the Super Cruise system, which is still the best system like this in its segment, and the best system in general as far as truly hands-free. So we are hands-free now, and it's doing a passer because we're coming up on a vehicle. And so I've done, again, over 600 miles here on the highway here, and I have some thoughts here after driving this vehicle so much. So what I can say is Super Cruise is still hands down the best system in my opinion. It still isn't perfect though. Just because it's the best doesn't mean that it's flawless. So the main things here about it are that it's sometimes a little too assertive, and there's been multiple times here in the past few days on the highway here where it tries to go for a pass whenever there's someone coming up in the left-hand lane. I can see that they're coming up, and it's not like they're in my blind zone. I'm not technically cutting them off, but like I'm inhibiting their progress and their passing because it's having me get over and slow them down because this thing isn't going to be set up to do some kind of a crazy acceleration when you pass. And so that's the only thing I don't love, is that it can sometimes be a little bit too assertive, and there's other times where it's not assertive enough, where, I mean, sometimes I got 3 car lengths between me and the car in front of me, and I'm going under my desired set speed, and I'm trying to do a pass, and there's people behind me, and they're thinking I'm just hogging the left lane because I'm not getting that pass done fast enough, I'm not getting close enough to the vehicle in front of me to put pressure on them to go, all those types of things. There's all these little human nuances to highway driving that Super Cruise still doesn't quite understand. Now, it does do some stuff, like it will nudge over a little bit into your lane if you're next to an 18-wheeler or something like that. Although I've found that Ford's Blue Cruise actually does that a little more evidently than Cadillac does these days, but Cadillac still does that. But the biggest thing here is that Super Cruise is still the only one that does do the truly hands-free lane changes, with Ford's Blue Cruise only doing that here for the newest 2025 Mach-E's, but everything else in the Ford lineup still is on older versions. Now, Ford will get there, but Cadillac and GM have been doing this for over 2 years now, of truly hands-free, even whenever you're doing your lane passing. And so I really do love it for that. Now, a few of the little quirks here are that the system oftentimes would say driver distraction detected just because I had my sunglasses on. And it was just the angle. I think sometimes the sensors must have caught the rim or something of the sunglasses, so I couldn't see my eyes perfectly clear, but I was looking forward, and it still was just saying that for some reason it felt like I was distracted, even though I obviously wasn't. And there were multiple times that were pestering me over and over again, like, you're distracted, you're distracted. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I got sometimes to the point of just taking off my sunglasses because I was tired of it bothering me about it. So again, there's still some work to be done here, and if you have sunglasses with an IR coating on them for the infrared, then it's not going to work at all, because this is an infrared sensor looking at your eyes, so just be aware of that. But it still is just phenomenal out here on the highway, and 70 miles per hour here, still nice and quiet, nice and smooth. And the fact that, again, this is also standard. Now, Super Cruise will become a subscription eventually. It depends on what trim you get, and you have various options there as far as the subscription package down the road. But it is something that comes here new on these, and it'd be great to see it forever for free. But that is something, obviously, if you're spending this kind of money, subscribing for Super Cruise, as excellent as it is, probably isn't that big of a deal. But just beware, you do have to subscribe to that eventually. There's really not a whole lot else to say, because again, there's nothing new mechanically here. It's just a really nice thing to live with. I think that it truly is the ultimate luxury cruiser, just because of the hands-free thing. And you might think this is a gimmick or something, but like, if you haven't experienced Super Cruise yet, especially on a long highway drive, the difference between having your hands up here and down here, just watching everything go by, it really does cut down on your fatigue significantly and gives you the most luxurious experience outside of someone driving you. And so, if you are talking about being in the driver's seat, this is the most luxurious experience you can have in the automotive market, because it's the best hands-free system, and all the super high-end stuff, Rolls Royces. I mean, I was in a Spectre last year, very impressive, even quieter, even smoother than this. It's truly remarkable, but you got to drive it. And I mean, again, a stupid thing to complain about, but whenever you're, again, doing hours and hours on the highway, that gets old quick, even in a Rolls Royce. You want to just sit back and relax, and then the Escalade, you can do that. And that's the definition of luxury to me, is being able to sit here in comfort. I have my massage, which is more of an advanced massage than even Rolls Royce gives you, honestly, from my experience, at least in the Spectre most recently. But so you have a massage. I mean, this whole road trip's been phenomenal, because I've had my massage going, fantastic surround sound experience, hands-free. You can't get better than that in 2025. You simply cannot. And the fact that, again, this is a safe, well-proven hands-free system as well. I mean, it did disconnect sometimes and ask me to take over, but it's really competent about doing most of that for you all the time. And again, like, we have a giant 18-wheeler here just next to us, and you hear it a little bit, but not much. I mean, this would be such a racket that I'd probably turn off the camera and re-record this portion if I was in any other car. It is really so quiet, and just, again, a marvelous thing to road trip. And so I think this truly is the best luxury cruiser money can buy right now, in my opinion. And even if I won the Powerball tomorrow and had hundreds of millions of dollars, if I was doing a highway road trip, this is what I would be driving. This is what I would own. Like, this is the best in the world as far as highway cruising, in my opinion. And so really the last thing to mention here is just the fuel economy very briefly, and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So fuel economy, 14 city, 18 highway. Unfortunately, we don't have the diesel option anymore. That was dropped here for 2025. So that was nice for the long range capability of diesel. So, you know, you don't have a ton of range here. I saw close to 500 miles per tank. Still great, but you know, the diesel was able to do even more. Now, people just didn't want the diesel, and that's why obviously it went away. But, you know, it would be nice to see that for the road trippers, you know, to return someday. But again, if there's no market there, I don't blame them for dropping it. And then as far as pricing and how it compares to the competition. So these start right around $90,000, and then this one, again, as tested, is $125,000. And again, there's room to even do a little bit more. Again, the rear seat package, the ESV version, you know, little things like that to balloon the price even further if you'd like. But so how that compares to the competitors? Well, first off, if you want to get the best price possible on an Escalade or any vehicle for that matter, you're definitely going to want to head over to mattmoranmotoring.com. There you'll be able to go to the new car quotes page and get access to dealer invoice pricing, as well as getting connected to a dealer where, you know, they can take you for a test drive, show you around the new Escalade here, show you all the cool stuff it can do, and you know, just allow you to get more familiar with the Escalade and see how it works for you. So if you're interested in that, there's going to be a link in the description, as well as one in a pinned comment that'll take you straight to that site to give you all that information. So, I mean, you know, there's other competitors, I suppose, but really the main two that are, again, truck-based large SUVs that have all the space this does are still just the Lincoln Navigator and the Jeep Grand Wagoneer. Now, Lincoln Navigator actually starts at $103,000 these days, so $13,000 more than this. And I'm not going to make this a value segment because no one in this segment is caring about value that much. But 13 grand higher starting price for the Navigator means if you are shopping in the lower trims of these vehicles, Escalade is definitely going to be the way to go, at least compared to Navigator, because again, that just, they start with higher feature content and just start at a higher point. But, you know, it means there is no lower spec version of the Navigator really anymore. So just be mindful of that. Also, you know, Blue Cruise is the other hands-free one that is very nice to have and is getting better again every day. It's a close runner-up to Super Cruise, not quite as good, but you know, if for some reason the Escalade's not for you, or you know, there's things about the Navigator that are more appealing, that's still going to be a very good hands-free system. And the other thing though with the Navigator is still, again, only the EcoBoost twin turbo V6 in that, no V8 option anymore in that. But the new Navigator is very nice as well, you know, with again a screen that spans almost the full dashboard, and some of the other things I mentioned earlier. But you know, the Navigator is very, very nice. So you know, can't knock those whatsoever, and you know, also a very nice vehicle. And the other one, of course, Grand Wagoneer. That one does start about $5,000 less than this. Now, the thing with that, though, is you have much less technology. Now, you get the most power of the bunch, I believe, from that Hurricane twin-turbo six-cylinder engine, inline six there. So, most power, and it gives you the least amount of tech. So, a little bit more of a simpler setup. And so, if that idea appeals to you, if maybe this is too much screen overload, you know, you can get the Grand Wagoneer, a little simpler, a little more familiar, I guess, for many people. That also does offer a hands-free system. I haven't been able to try that yet. It's newer, and you know, I just am skeptical that it's going to be as good as Super Cruise for sure, and even as good as Blue Cruise, I think, you know, because Ford and, you know, GM here have been at work with these systems for many years now, and Stellantis is kind of new to that whole field. So, you know, probably won't be as good of an experience, but I can't knock it until I try it. But just, you know, be aware of that. And you know, also I have to say the interior is very nice. There's, you know, very impressive stereo in that Grand Wagoneer and all that as well, Macintosh stereo. But the materials, there's a lot of piano black plastic that's really squeaky and rattly in that. Now this isn't perfect, and it might just be this vehicle, you know, just this one, but there was a pretty persistent squeak around like the A-pillar, and sometimes it sounded like it was actually coming from the steering column itself, and it was a pretty annoying little squeak there. So actually, this is a good example. This car behind me was setting up to do a pass, and I also am doing a pass here because there's a car here, you know, this 18-wheeler we're having to pass, but I didn't cut them off, but again, I kind of was a jerk with Super Cruise here by, you know, coming out in front of them instead of, usually, personally, I would let them pass first because they were the first one to go out into the lane a little bit, and, you know, I kind of jumped the gun there on them, but, so that's case in point as far as, you know, Super Cruise. So there have been sometimes where I've kind of actually canceled the lane change because I didn't want it to do that to someone. It does sometimes also appear to some people like you're a little confused. Lane changes are a little slower than the average vehicle as well. So, you know, to an outside observer, it may look kind of a little automated, and people might even be able to figure out you're using Super Cruise if they're in the know here. But it is, again, still fantastic out here on the open road especially, and whenever you don't have to worry about traffic as much, that's really where it's the absolute best. But yeah, so I mean, overall, you know, I just feel like Wagoneer, there's a little bit of savings there, but once you get to the higher trims, they're like 118 grand for the top Grand Wagoneer, so you're not really saving a whole lot. And again, Escalade is legendary for a reason. Grand Wagoneer, it's cool that is, you know, a new thing that's on offer here. It used to just be Navigator, and that was it. So I'm glad that Jeep's competing, but I think, you know, Escalade's always kind of been the king, and I think that it still retains that crown in my mind. And again, even when you look at the specs, I mean, again, biggest screens, best hands-free thing, just in all the ways, it seems like they kind of check the boxes a little bit better than everyone else does currently. So overall, yeah, I think this is still the king, and like I said, best luxury cruiser money can buy if you value the idea of a hands-free experience and all the other stuff that the Escalade offers here. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2025 Escalade, though. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Cadillac for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.